to the first DataBeers Brussels.
Can we do that once more?
So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our 17th edition of DataBeers. So, tonight we are with quite a lot of different people just for you to talk about data and, of course, with beers. So, I hope that you're equipped for this evening because I think that it will give us a lot of really good data stories and really good interesting talks. So what is DataBeers? So DataBeers was founded in 2014 in Madrid and by data enthusiasts. And since then it has like grown everywhere. So I just looked like 20 minutes earlier a little bit about DataBeers, and there is more than 25 chapters now in all different cities all over the world. So yeah, here there is only part of them, but yeah, apparently there is much more. So we are really happy to be like one of them in Brussels. So what is actually DataBeers? Because I told you like, yeah, we talk about data. So it's for people who enjoy this type of stories and or I hope ends beers. So in general, we do that, of course, like in person, but there is always a pre-beers warm-up. Then there is rules about the data stories. So normally should be really short talks, 7 minutes, no code, no formula, really something for the really like public, as many people as possible should be able to understand. Yeah, it's really something that's has to be interesting for everyone, and we hope then that tonight you will be interested in our talks. So little bits here because we are not in the in our usual place, right? In person, it's on Zoom webinar. So for those of you who are not that comfortable with it, there is like a lot of different stuff that we can do. So first is the chats. So here in the chat you can like chat with both the panelists and the attendees. And what I propose to you to do first is to chat and tell us, so to everyone, both panelists and attendees, what are you drinking? So, okay, which beer are you drinking? Right? 10x. I'm personally drinking Jungle Joy from the Saint-Feuillin. So I will also do the game. So yeah, Jungle Joy, you should be able to read with the chat, as you can see, to really like communicate with everyone. So don't hesitate to use it during the talk to give you comments, to shout out how interesting you find the talks, etc., etc. We are always like open to like comments. So for the second thing that you can do is to like raise your hands and put your hands down. So for example, raising your hands will allow us to see who wants to talk, who wants to talk directly to the speakers. So one thing that I propose to you right now is to raise your hands if you've already gone to an edition of DataBeers. Are you already like, how to say, one of our usual victims of data talks? If so, please raise your hands. Okay, so I see 4 people at the moment, apparently 5. Okay, so you're actually quite a new people, 6. Okay, so most of you apparently it's your first time, so welcome, and I hope that you will enjoy. So yeah, you can lower your hands now. Thank you. So yeah, raising your hands will allow you when we will go to the question and answer parts to directly have the opportunity to ask a question to the speaker. So please, if you're interested, after the talk, raise your hand and you can be selected to ask questions to our speaker. And the last part is the regular Q&A. So you can put questions. So it's if you're shy, you don't want to take to speak aloud, which I understand totally. You can just put your question in the Q&A. Everybody can see the question, so you can actually upvote questions. Okay, also put comments, if you want to just point okay, I want to say a little thing more about that particular question or not. So yeah, don't hesitate during the talk to also ask question. That's the other way of asking in our case. So yeah, please don't hesitate to participate, and yeah, I hope that you will find this as interactive as possible, because it's not easy online. Okay, one important thing, if you have questions, ask them. We are actually giving to the top 5 of enthusiastic, I would say, data drinkers, a pack of survival pack of beers from the Beer Brussels project. So unfortunately, it will be only to Europe. So if you are international outside of Europe, unfortunately, you will not eligible for this pack. But yeah, we will still write your name. What?
I don't think it's whole Europe, so please don't raise the hopes up to everybody.
Yes. So yeah, we will, if it's international up to certain points, unfortunately, we will not be able to send you something. So, but we will write a check, and next time you come to Brussels, we will offer you a beer. So yeah, please don't hesitate to participate to hope for win one of our packs. Okay, another thing that's interesting for this time is that we use Gadathon for the event. So Gadathon is really only for the social parts. So if you want to discuss, for example, during the break or after the talk, after the event, well, just go there. You have normally received all the information on Eventbrite. So it's available on the online event page. It's also available in the chat. So just scroll up and you will find all the information to join us. Okay, so now a little bit about us. We are quite a lot of different people coming from a lot of different backgrounds. And yeah, we are preparing everything here for the events. And a little, how to say, shout out to Jose, who took care, especially this time, of the Gadathon part. So yeah, it was looked like it was really difficult. So I just wanted to give him a virtual cookie for him, or virtual beer. I don't know how we can select that here. But yeah, it was really a good job, and I hope that you will appreciate this new thing for our events. So the last thing that we can do with you to allow to find something a little bit more interactive, interesting, is the poll. So each time we will have a talk, we will give you a poll a little bit just before the talk, so we can know a little bit more about you. What do you know about the topic of the talk? What do you know a little bit about some specific theory about it? So it's just getting to know you. Also for the speakers, it's really interesting because they kind of see what kind of public they have. So it's try to answer as much as possible to our polls. So we are getting to know you. So here, just the first question is more what is your background, and do you work with data, or do you work in industry or in academia, etc., etc. So I will leave the poll running while I will just continue presenting a little bit here. So the lineup today, we have actually a lot of people from all over the world, so that's really cool. About this time, so it's different from the last times. We don't have any talks about COVID, which it's not so bad, I think. So yeah, it's I think it will be really interesting. And so we will first begin with Ramesh and the firefighting, data with firefighting, then some from Duccio with the vertical farming, then 2 talks about networks, one about the network of ice and fire for the enthusiastic of Game of Thrones, and finally, the last but not least, Nele about more bioinformatic kind of style of talk about the cardiac arrhythmia. So yeah, I hope that you will enjoy. So as usual, every time we tell a little data story. So we share with you something that we found interesting on the internet. So I personally wanted to talk, you know, we don't have any talks about COVID. So I just wanted to talk about something that concerns us all, that's really, you know, contaminating everybody all the time. It really does not like change that you have different religion, different, I don't know, like from different countries and these kind of things. Of course, I want to talk about the Christmas songs. So Christmas songs, I don't know for you, but for me, it's like a nightmare at the moment. So if we look this beautiful charts about December, the month of December, I'm pretty much there. See, my tolerance for Christmas music has gone way down. So maybe you should be asking, okay, why? What's happening, Charlotte? You sound somebody really jolly and like loving music. Well, yes, but when you listen to the same music all the time during the day, it begins to be really difficult. And what do I mean by all the time the same music? At the moment, I was really surprised by the number of time I was hearing "All I Want for Christmas Is You" on the radio, which was actually very surprising. So I was curious. I was like, okay, let's look a little bit. So this actually, my friends, are the Google Trends on "All I Want for Christmas" term research. And as you can see, actually, that's a really good way of determining if we are close to Christmas or not. So yeah, that was actually surprising that it's not so surprising at the same time. But apparently, looking for these words is a really good way of seeing if you're close to Christmas or not surprisingly. So I was, okay, what does this make that song really so interesting? So I was looking on internet, trying to find an answer. And my good friend, so apparently Alice Zhao, a data scientist, data enthusiast, also, she looked at different Christmas songs, and she did like really a good job of analyzing the like text mining kind of analysis. So it's based on this top 30 Christmas song of the century. I didn't like, how to say, expose myself to this because I'm already at my limits. But I looked at her analysis, and it was really interesting that she saw quite this really good evolution of the song in Christmas songs, like the topic, which went from "we are cold" to actually, yeah, we love everyone and let's party, which pretty much represents, I think, our modern society now. And yeah, and also this kind of transition from Santa Claus to Santa in love and to just love, which apparently is enough to speak about Christmas. So that's good. I mean, Christmas, it's love, right? It's family and everything. So that was also a really interesting thing. And then I found this particular really graphs that explains that apparently "All I Want for Christmas Is You," this particular song that I was listening to everywhere, had the most, like the highest number of unique words in Christmas songs, which I found like, it's more like random facts, but I found it really interesting. And the other really interesting things, apparently Feliz Navidad, which is like one of the really well-known Christmas songs, it's like 24 words, which means it should be really easy to learn also, which is a good thing. So yeah, this was like my little data story. But one thing that I want you to remember is, if you don't like Christmas songs, guys, don't go there. This should be your map of places to avoid, okay? because apparently in Philippines at that time, it's like the top research term, all I want for Christmas on Google. So yeah, it was like really actually some kind of random countries, which yeah, I found quite interesting. So yeah, this was my little rant about Christmas song this time. So I just want to finish by going back to this really beautiful visual of December. So I know that we are actually in this region, so we are looking forward to a lot of food, right? Festive moods, awkward family Zoom meeting this year, unfortunately. But I think that we should remember that Christmas songs are really giving us the message, the really important message of all is that, yeah, it's a time also for love and family and party. So we should still do that and enjoy our time for Christmas and winter holidays for those of you who don't celebrate Christmas, but still enjoying the holidays. So yeah, that was my little story. So if you have a data story to share with us, then please contact us, send us an email at databeersbrussels@gmail.com. We are always interested to have new speakers. So yeah, please come and contact us and we will be really happy to hear from you. So don't hesitate. Yeah, please help us improve. So after the day after the talk, there will be a survey. Please try to answer as best as you can so we can improve again and again our talks, our presentations, our intro, our data story. I hope you liked mine. And I hope you will like also the one from our speakers. But yeah, it's really important. It will help us to give us better things every time. So yeah, please keep that in mind. So thank you to our sponsor, Business and Decision. Also, thank you to GatherTown for offering us the opportunity to be on GatherTown this time. So yeah, and also, of course, I will still thank Moonpunt, even though we're not there, we're still keeping them in our hearts and in our minds. So yeah, thank you to all of them. So to keep in touch with us, we have a website. So it's really easy, DataBeers.Brussels. We are on the Twitter, Facebook, by mail, as I said earlier, and we also are on LinkedIn. So if you liked our event, just add us and you will receive the updates about the next events. So just to finish, to wrap up everything, I will share the results of the poll. So most of you work with data in academia, but still quite a lot of you are working with data in industry. Yeah, there was one person who needed an excuse to open a beer. I hope that we were there to offer that for you. That's even though you don't work with data, that you will enjoy the rest of the talk. So that's all for me. And I will now let Johan continue with his talk.
Thank you. Thank you. I love the song, All I Want for Christmas Is You. So I should turn up the radio. So indeed, we have really fascinating speakers this time. So first one is Romesh from Sri Lanka. He's got a PhD from Oxford in AI, where he worked on bioinformatics, which will please, I'm sure, some of the participants here in our audience. And after his PhD, he moved to a startup on drug discovery. In 2008, he started a simulation company where he used game technologies to improve, to make simulations better. And that has been growing this company to 120 people now. But Romesh was ready for something new. And so he did a management buyout to found his current startup. And this startup is what he will be talking about today, about using AI to mitigate wildland fires. Okay, Romesh, I'll leave the floor to you.
Oh, thanks, Johan. Share my screen. I hope everybody can see my screen.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So I've been looking at the polling questions. That's really interesting, and I hope I'll be able to clarify some of those over my talk. So really, today's talk is not, unfortunately, not about bioinformatics, which I did a while ago. But today's talk is about a company I've been working on for the last year or so, where we are trying to come up with a way to solve the bushfire problem, the forest fire problem, and come up with a way that we can scale with the way that things are growing. And what I hope you'll find as the takeaway from this talk today is the fact that the success of building a system like this is eventually data. It's how we collect data, the quality of the data we collect, and how we use it. And I hope at the end of this talk, you'll understand the importance of that. But this talk is really about how we are setting up the foundation for this company and setting up a proper data collection platform, and through that also solving some of the more pressing problems that are going on at the moment. So really, as you know, forest fires are a global problem. They're there in almost every country in the world, and we're seeing a steady increase in the number of fires every year. But what's more scary is that the amount of damage that's being done by these fires year on year is increasing almost exponentially. And that's because the fires are larger, they're causing more damage, and more people are living closer to forests and these areas, and it's causing more damage. But the problem is that the limited amount of resources is not that's available to fight these fires is not keeping up with the number of fires and the amount of damage and the size of fires. And that's because once you have more fires than you have resources, you've got to allocate these intelligently. And for that, you need real-time intelligence on where the fires are, how bad they are, and all that stuff. And that data is really not coming in at the moment. And the firefighters are struggling to allocate those resources properly. So data really, for one thing, is the data in real time, where you know where the fires are, where they're going to be in 1 hour's time, where it's going to be in 2 hours' time. That data is not coming in, mainly because the biggest source of data at the moment for most forest fires is actually from airline pilots who call down and say, I can see a fire down there. Or from people calling and saying, I can see a fire far away. Or the third one is using satellites. But the big problem with satellites is there are two big problems. One is that the resolution of satellite data is about 200 meters by 200 meters. So it's not really that detailed. But the greater problem is that satellites usually have to pass over the country that owns that satellite for it to download the data because the data is so large. And about 90% of the fire detection satellites are owned by NASA. And they got to pass over the US for that data to be downloaded. And most of the time, this data that they get on the fires is about 12 hours old, which is not really real-time data for these firefighters to use. So as a solution for this, we've been looking at using autonomous drones, building an ecosystem to have autonomous drones to fight these fires. And initially, to solve the big problem that's going on at the moment, which is get real-time data to the firefighters as fast and as detailed as we can. And then through that, build a business around that, which we can then collect enough data on these fires, the granularity right on the ground level, which will then give us the ability to be able to forecasting, pre-finances and all that. But to do that, we have to first build this platform and also a business case which would fund these fire mapping drones. So our first effort over the last few months has been building a drone platform to collect this fire data. And this is just a small visualization of what we are trying to achieve here. We're building a drone system, obviously, and this is what's called a VTOL drone. It can take off vertically and then fly without using the rotors, using its wings for lift, which means that it has greater flying time, greater range, and then control through the mobile tower network or through satellite so that it can fly to larger ranges. And this drone will go over the fire zones and continuously map where the fires are, where the fire lines are, and eventually do it autonomously so that we'll have real-time information on what's going on. We'll use thermal cameras, AI, all that to do this geotagging and mapping. And this data can then be relayed in real time to central command stations who will have all the data available so that they can deploy their resources as and when they need. And eventually, at the final stage of the project, we hope to reutilize this platform to also build some fire suppression drones, which can then go to these locations which are identified and actually try and put some of these fires out as well. So on this project, we're doing this in 3 stages. And like I said, we are still in this first phase, which is the data collection, and we built a hardware platform to do this data collection. We got cameras, we got gimbals, we got the data computers, the link to the ground for control stations. We're building all that, and we've done that, and we've already deployed these units on helicopters, which are now flying around Australia and collecting some data and mapping fires. But we've already now started working on the mapping drone, which will then allow us to mount that data collection system on the mapping drone. But then the really important part, the way that we can actually scale this and take this to the next level, is once we automate both fire detection and the drone itself. And that's the real part where we'll be using a lot of AI to automate detection and also tracking and following. Then, of course, we got to build a platform to be able to do the data storage, have online databases so we can collect all this data in one place, and also integrate that with other information like current weather data, historical weather information, stuff like that, so that we can start doing analytics, and that will be the third stage. But really our focus at this point is building this data collection platform and also building the storage mechanism so we can move on to phase 3, which will allow us to do that. And this is just some of the work we've done. As you can see, with my partner, actually, Kyle, I think he's on this call. He's the genius who built this whole unit. And he's been doing flights around Australia. We built this system which allows you to track the fires, mark the fires, all that. And in stage 2, we are going to be mounting this on a drone system. So I guess the most important part for this talk is where we're using AI. And we're using AI, we identified 3 main areas where AI is going to be used in our system. And at the moment, we are working on the first one, which is in orange, which is the automated data collection. We understand that it's not going to be possible to scale the way we want with the number of fires that are available, with people manually tagging these fires. We have to build automated systems which will detect these fires, tag them, mark their GPS location. So we are working on AI modules to do this fire line identification tagging. We're using object detection, object identification, image segmentation, image processing, and also a lot of photogrammetry, because we got to then map that GPS location. These objects that we detect, we got to map the actual GPS location as well. Then we also got to do what's called hotspot tagging. And hotspots are basically these parts of a fire which remain alight even after the rest of the fire has been put out. You got to identify them, because those hotspots could lead to a larger fire down the line, or it could reignite a fire like that happened in Australia last year during the winters. And then also some extra modules which will run on our drones, which will automatically detect people, vehicles, buildings, stuff like that, so then it can alert the firefighters on what's on the ground. Then the second part that will allow us to scale is actually automating the flight, automating drone fire line tracking, so it can follow fires, follow tracks, navigate properly, support BV loss, which is beyond visual line of sight, and also emergency management. And finally, that's when we can move on to the analytics and forecasting, when we can do pre-fire forecast, during fire analysis, post-fire forecasting. But as you can see, all that is fully dependent on how we manage this data and the quality of the data that we collect. And that's what we're really focused on now, building that, but we're also building that initial bit of tech to do the fire line detection, to automate that part of it as well. So this is just some slides that we did some time ago, how we've been using a thermal camera and the system that we built, which gives us both a thermal view and a normal view. And as you can see, this was a controlled burn that was done in Australia. This is a tech we built to try and detect hotspots. So really, this is a coming together of a really large system. It's not easy. It's a really complex system, because we got hardware, integration, drones, radio platforms. We got to bring all that together. But what that all lead to is a complete data collection platform for fire, which really has not been done before. And we hope once we collect that data, we'll be able to move on to the analytical part, which can actually make a difference in how these fires are fought. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ramesh. Are there questions? Yes. Are there questions from the audience? Please raise your hand, and then the master of ceremony can raise.
Well, I can ask something
Yes.
while we are waiting for the attendees. These hotspots. So you say that these fires keep burning and without. So is it why we can't detect them without drones? Like why it's so difficult to detect them? And what is it? Like it's inside the tree and you can't see it with your eyes, or?
That's right. So I mean, you can actually see them, but you can't fully put them out. These are these tree stumps where it's actually still burning inside the tree trunk, and you know it's there, but you can't really put it out because it's encased by the tree. And then what these firefighters do is that they continuously monitor these hotspots, almost go and look at them on a weekly basis to see how they're going, whether they've gone out and stuff. But also, it's hard to manually monitor hotspots over a long period, especially when they're in remote locations. So it becomes physically difficult to scale, managing 100, 200, 500 hotspots in your area. So then that's where drones come in. You can send drones autonomously to go and look at them, see what their temperature is, see if they're still burning, whether they've gone out, and decide whether you can stop that. But really, these hotspots are a big problem. Not only do they have to be detected, but they also have to be monitored regularly after the rest of the fire has been put out.
And what kind of technology you use? Is it just kind of image recognition? Is like infrared cameras or?
Infrared cameras, totally. Infrared cameras, but we're tuning the cameras, trying to identify how we can tune the cameras perfect so can and also link it to things like the current weather, the air temperature, because then the radiation will change, and try to build the AI which can actually dig into this and understand more about it rather than just knowing whether it's a hotspot or not.
And do you have some kind of estimate what how much you can improve prevention of forest fires by this technology?
So definitely it will have an immediate improvement on how we manage the fires, but they'll have real-time information which is minutes old rather than hours old. So there'll be an immediate improvement there. But then the big thing that we want to develop through this is also develop what are called combustibility models. And combustibility models are one of the biggest obstacles to firefighting, because for a fire to burn, you need fuel, and the fuel is the grass, the whatever is around there. But that grass, the type of grass, the weather, the temperature that was there the day before, all that affects how combustible that is. So the better detailed your combustibility models are, the better you can do predictions on a fire, not only whether it's going to burn, but also looking at a fire now where it's going to be in an hour's time, in a 2 hours time, which direction is it going on this thing. So, and that's the idea. And we really hope that once we build these combustibility models, the big change is once we'll be able to do those forecasting, and we'll actually come up with correct predictions on where the fire is going to be in 2, 3, 4 hours time, which will allow the firefighters to deploy their resources as best as they can to save the most amount of lives, save most amount of land, stuff like that.
Thank you. Maybe somebody else?
Yes, I saw a question in the chat. Someone, Kyle, who said that sometimes in Australia, the fire is sometimes underground in peat, which you cannot see. Do you have something to... Sorry?
That's exactly the problem. I mean, it's really spotting these, especially when you're talking like countries like Australia, where the distances are really large and the areas are large. Actually locating these manually becomes a really difficult task. And now they do this with helicopters, which are very, very expensive to fly. They cost like $3,000 an hour. And they're also dangerous. Last year, a couple of firefighting helicopters crashed and those people died because they fly into smoke and it's dangerous there. So really managing this stuff manually is becoming harder and harder with the fires going on. And automation is the key. But automation will only work once we have that quantum of data we need to be able to train these systems.
Yeah. Okay. Then I have a question from Nela, who asks in which countries you're rolling out this technology?
In Australia. I mean, my partner's based in Australia. We're building the drones in Australia. So initially we'll be rolling this out in Australia, but then try to use those models we built and go out of Australia at a later point.
And do you think are there specificities to the geography? Like, do you think it will work?
We're hoping not. We hope that this data we collect will be transferable, but Then of course it will grow once we move to different types of vegetations, different types of countries. But we're hoping that those initial models we build will be much easier to transfer into another country rather than starting from scratch.
Yes, indeed. Okay. Thank you. Then,
sorry. No, I had a question, but if there's someone else.
Yes, let's.
I would.
Yes, I'll come to you in a second, but let's first move to Anton. You have a question?
Myself. Can you hear me, right?
Yes.
Yeah, hi. The question is, it's very nice that you fight against fires, but do you do something to prevent them? Because I think should be really nice to prevent. And my question is, what do you do actually about prevention? And do you already know, do you collect some data, how actually those fires start? Is it because of some humans? Do they smoke, or do they do some agricultural activities that actually cause these fires, or it's all natural, maybe because of the lightnings or this kind of stuff? So prevention and collecting data, how they start.
Right. I mean, so most of the fires from the data starts with lightning, but more and more fires are being started by humans, but still a bulk of them start because of lightning. And in terms of prevention, once again, it's the whole idea behind prevention is building risk models. And they do this in Australia. They do a lot of control burns where they try to burn grassland areas before the fire season starts. But once again, that's not scalable. They need to do a risk analysis to see which areas are more at risk, and then do that. And still the models are still not good enough. They're relying more on the experience of the firefighters, the people who work in the forest department to do that, but it's not done with accurate modeling, and that's purely because there is not enough data available. In terms of prevention, there's also some work that we want to do with not prevention before the fire starts, but once the fire starts, try to mitigate the damage. And that's something that even a lot of countries do, where they pour down these deterrent lines. They use suppressant, and if it's close to like a settlement, they'd like pour lots of this suppressant in front of those houses so that the fire won't cross. But that, once again, you need enough time to get your resources there, and that's why it's more important to do the prediction stuff as well. But really, they do a lot of preemptive work now, but it's all done manually. It's done with people's experience, the firefighters' experience, and once again, something that was in my polling questions is that in Australia, about 90% of the firefighters are volunteers. They're people who volunteer to fight the fires. They're not really trained, and they struggle to do this stuff in advance, and they're called when there's emergency. So really, the answer to your question is there's not much being done on prevention yet. It's more reactive, and that's why it's really important to collect this data.
Yep, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
We have lots of questions. There is one from Rishikesh Dungay. So he suggests, what would happen if you would use static cameras? Is that an option instead of drones, and what would be the impact on cost?
Certainly an option, but the problem is, how would you scale that? When you're talking large countries like Australia, California, the distances are so large. You'll need huge number of cameras, and then maintaining those cameras would be a problem. Whereas these type of drones that we're building, the VTOL drones, which don't need that much energy to stay up in the air, can stay up in the air for about 12 hours and cover a huge area, because they can cover, keep going around in circles. So when you work out the actual unit microeconomics, it's actually much cheaper to do it with a drone, and much safer than doing it with helicopters, which is what they do now.
Yes, and also I guess you can adapt it to the situation because they're mobile indeed. Huh?
That's right.
Okay, then Jose, you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I had a question actually. I guess it comes from the combination of two questions. First one from Kyle, that was about well, you answered that indeed, like, localizing the hotspots and everything was very important. But then someone else asked about how this would be moved into other countries, into other environments, if this could be really, like you develop it for Australia, but could be used. But Spain, for instance, has a lot of wildfires also. And I was just thinking, like, that this seems like Australia seems to have a very unique, possibly, way of creating hotspots. So I was wondering how you think it would be scaled to another country or moved to another country.
I mean, I just don't have enough data on how big a problem hotspots is in outside Australia. But the little bit I know, it's still a problem right around the world, and that's a big reason for why this once a wildfire season starts, you have these fires popping up all over the place because you got these remnants which can get things rolling all over again. So it's really two problems here, but either way, it's collecting the data here. And while we are flying, I mean, the fire line is always a problem. And the problem with the satellite maps is that you get a satellite map which is 12 hours old, and when the firefighters go there, the fires actually move to a different place, and the whole environment has changed. So it's really about getting that real-time data to these guys onto the ground as fast as we can. In terms of and translating to other countries, obviously there'll be some challenges in terms of hilly terrain and all that, which is a bit easier to do in Australia. But once again, once we solve the main technical problems, which is bringing this system together, I don't think that'll be that much of an obstacle once we go there. And Australia is a good place to do this because it's becoming a very conducive environment for drone testing. They're very open to new drone startups and new companies. So it's a good place, and it's also a big problem for the country. So it's a perfect mix of building this technology out of Australia.
Nice. Sounds super interesting. Well, yeah, good luck.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's wrap up here. Thank you, Romesh, again for the very nice talk. I'm very curious to hear about the future of your project.
Oh, so am I.
Yes, I guess. Okay, so the next speaker is Duccio. He's a physicist, has a master's degree from La Sapienza in Rome, a PhD from the Complexity Center at Imperial College in London, 2 years of postdoc experience in the Center for Advanced Spatial Analysis at University College London. And then, like I guess many, or it's one of the patterns we discern with physicists, he moved to data science. So he worked 2 years in a Paris-based startup in computer vision and it's cheat and geolocation data. So it's, and now he's since for a year, he's head of data science and AI at Agricola Moderna, which is a vertical farm in Milan. And then he also told us that he's a fan from AS Roma, and I think that's a ping pong club, but I'm not very sure. But Duccio, you can explain that to us as well during your talk.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, well, I'll make use of my 7 minutes and speak about AS Roma later during the night.
Great.
Okay, so I'll share my screen. Please let me know if everything is in order. Okay.
Perfect.
Great. Okay, so well, first of all, thank you very much for this opportunity. So today I will speak about vertical farming and data science and its role in it. I work for, so I'm Duccio Piovani, and I work for Agricola Moderna, which is a vertical farm startup right outside Milan. We're 19 kilometers from Milan. So we mainly grow salads and sell them to supermarkets and to online platforms. But and we do this, and we also have an R&D activity, which is pretty broad. We touch data science, of course, and this will be the topic of my talk, but even plant science and engineering and climate. But I don't know, I don't see the results of the poll, unfortunately. It's probably my fault. But okay, there it is. So, okay, so that's good. Many of you already know what vertical farming is and are willing to taste it. So this is let's start with defining what vertical farming is. So this is an image of our facility, of our production facility in Milan. You can see, so this gives you an idea of what a vertical farm is. Vertical farming is a technique which an agricultural technique indoor, which doesn't make use of the sun nor the soil. So this may seem very counterintuitive, but actually, if we look at the data and we look at the details, we understand that this is actually a very sustainable technique. It's sustainable because food produced this way, it's produced locally, and this means that consumption and production are close, and the food avoids to travel useless kilometers around the world. It's indoor, and this increases the water efficiency by a lot, actually 95%, as you can read on the slide, because we are able to recycle the water that's not used in our system. And the fact that it's indoor allows us not to use any type of pesticide. So in our farm, we don't use anything. It's nickel-free. It's in our farm, but it is true for any farm, any vertical farm, and it's definitely one of the strong points. And of course, the product is great. It tastes great. The nutrients levels are higher, and it's very tasty because it's fresh. You eat it like the day before or after it being. Oh, sorry, this happens all the time. Okay, so there are some. Sorry about this, but I cannot. I have the Zoom in the way. I can't. There we go. Okay. There are some issues, of course, and this is why we're doing a lot of research. The fact is that the sun is free, and the energy costs money, and CO2, of course. So it's not sustainable. And this shrinks the amount of species we can grow with this technique by a lot. Because of course we can grow everything, or not everything, but most things. It's just that it's not economically viable to then sell them at a ridiculous price. But we are optimistic, and the reason is, of course, that there's a lot of data. This is not the only reason, but this is the reason I personally am happy about it. But of course, there's a lot of developments in genetics, developments in energy production, which make us optimistic. But today, of course, we'll speak about data. So vertical farming is like the perfect perfect setting for data science, because it's a stable process. You control everything that goes inside, because you control the climate, the temperature, the airflow, the level of CO2, the pressure, and so on and so forth. And you can then measure the effect by putting sensors everywhere. This is why we've built a centralized database, serverless cloud architecture, and we've taken this very seriously from the beginning, and we're gathering all sorts of types of data. I mean, all the data we can put our hands on, we gather, and we start to study the effect in order to then optimize the response of the plants, and then definitely optimize the growth. Let's take a look at the type of data. So we have sensor data on the climate, as I said. So this means that we put the sensors of the ones that I've already been through, and we collect them. We also carry on some CFD, so the fluid dynamics, to understand how the effect may spread in great detail. And this is and we've built a phenotyping platform, so an image-based phenotyping platform. Imagine you have to understand the response of many plants. Of course, you can measure their height, their weight manually, and this takes a lot of time. And it's invasive, because you cannot. I mean, once you've cut the plant, it's not there anymore. So this is why we moved to images. We have hyperspectral images. I guess you all know what they are because of the talk we've just been through, and RGBD images, and then we analyze them. So this is an example of our RGBD images, which means you have an RGB channel, which is a normal image, plus a depth channel. We then train our deep learning algorithms to learn to detect the leaves, and crop them out and separate them from the rest of the image. And by doing so, what we can do then is, exploiting the depth and some mathematics, we can crop every leaf out, or almost every leaf, and perform like a three-dimensional reconstruction of the shape, get the area of the leaf, its height, and in the future perhaps its texture, hopefully. We do the same thing with hyperspectral imaging. which gives us the spectrum in the right on the infrared. So we use V-smear as a technique, and this is a very rich source of information and very hard actually to manage, because it's a lot of data and to manage. But it can give you information exactly on the type of chemicals that are in the leaves. So here we go. This is my last slide that I'm saying this because my time is almost up. So the idea here is that we've got sensors, we've got images, we've got manual phenotyping. I didn't mention that our software developer built an app which our agronomists interact with, and all this data is then reorganized, given context to, and it speaks to each other, to itself, in our database, which is like a knowledge base we are building, and that it's growing every day, on how plants respond to climate, to environmental changes. And of course, we then analyze this and take smart decisions, hopefully. Thank you very much. That was it.
Okay, thank you. Other questions from the audience? I saw one person who missed the second slide. I don't recall what slide it was, but he asks if you could show it, the second slide. Quite clear requests.
This here? This is it? So, is this it?
No. Okay, I'll leave. No. Maybe I'll leave Lorenzo to ask a question. Meanwhile, if others have questions, please raise your hand. Okay, Lorenzo, if you want, you can ask. You can talk.
Okay, while we are waiting for Lorenzo,
yes.
Can I just add something? So how much so like you this amazing technique, you can have the whole shape of the leaf and the colors and the stuff. How much this actually improves what you know, based to just kind of old-fashioned how big the leaf is?
Yeah, but no, well, great question. And this is the old how big the leaf is, right? Because you can, I mean, if you want to scale this in many plants and do systematic experiments on a lot of different environmental conditions, you don't have the time to measure every leaf, or let's say not every leaf, but like most of the leaves in detail. This is done automatically and systematically, right? So you can you're more precise once these algorithms work well, and it's not super easy, and but B, you can scale this system, and you can use it. So on the first place, you can definitely use it for R&D, as we are doing now, but you can also use it for monitoring. So for spotting illnesses. So I did, in 7 minutes, I didn't have time to touch on all the topics, but you can even go into stress detection and disease detection, of course, which is exactly done in the same way. So the point is, this is non-invasive because you don't touch the plant, so you're not perturbating the plant in any way. Because of course, if you want to measure the leaf with a ruler, or it's hard without breaking it or without it like destroying it. So it's not invasive. It's let's say, we can say real time is not the right word, but it gives the idea. So you can follow all the growth of the same leaf, given the fact that it's not invasive. So you can construct, you can play, let's say, with lights and give more blue spectrum at the beginning and see how this reacts. Then give more red at different stages, and you can study the evolution of the plants to these stimulus. Of course, manually, you could do that manually, but on a bunch of trays. So our lab at the moment, in our lab, we have 3 environments, 3 growing rooms, and we have 81 trays in the small one, and then we carry some experiments which have more than 300 trays. So this system helps quantifying things a lot and scaling up.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I have a question actually. So from the member of the participant, so what has been the biggest breakthrough or conclusion that you have drawn? What was the biggest improvement that you could make based or on data analysis?
Well, this is a good point. Our R&D in this current setting is done. Is started, like the lab has been finished on September, so we didn't do any. We still don't have a breakthrough in our R&D, and we are just finished building all this let's say automated platform. But this system of systematically monitoring everything helped us a lot in our commercial facility to understand where there were problems, where there were defects, where the irrigation wasn't working very well, where the airflow was lacking, and where the plants didn't have a good color. So we don't have an R&D breakthrough. So we didn't build a new light recipe or a new nutrient recipe for the moment. We are testing now as we speak. So in the lab tomorrow we will harvest different light combinations. So we will see how the different lights, the effect of different lights on several species. So, yeah. So this is.
So it's mainly used now for, which is very interesting, I think, indeed, to optimize operations and
No, it's not mainly used for that, but that's where the effects have been more tangible.
Yes, well, till now, I mean.
Yeah. The effects. Well, we use them in the lab as well, but so mainly in the lab, I would say. Okay. But it has been more useful for us to monitor production for the moment.
Yes. Okay, I see. And I have a question from Anton. I will give you the floor. If voila, you have two questions, Anton.
Yeah, so two small questions. What about nutrients? Like, is it really the same as like for normal farming? And the second question is, I assume it really consumes a lot of energy. So like, do you use, which energy do you use? Like, do you use renewable energy resources or the normal fossil ones?
Okay, yes. So first question, I don't think I know how to answer because I'm not an agronomist. We use a hydroponic system, so the plants get all their, let's say, their nutrients from the water. So there are different types of recipes we are trying, but honestly, I don't know. So that's the question that I take care of the data, and unfortunately, I still didn't have the time to go in the details of agronomy, which I will definitely do in the following years, but not for the moment. The renewable energy question, yes, we do use solar panels, but that's a very small percentage of our production at the moment, because the facility we're operating at the moment is just a pilot. So it's meant, even though it's 15 meter squares, it's meant for us. I mean, we are a young team. The company's been funded 2 years ago by two friends of mine, and they started 2 years ago and very quickly scaled the company to, like, from a very small lab to a medium-sized facility. They didn't have time for these details because they were like hungry for results, and we are now. Well, they are mainly, but we are studying and looking for funding, and already working on a facility which will be 10 times bigger, and where renewable energy will have a central role. Because if you don't produce your energy in some way, this is not it's not worth it. So there's a big part of our focus now is on that. Not mine, but of the company's focus.
Thanks.
We have a question from YouTube, from Luciano, who asks, how do you grow the plants without soil?
Well, that's a good question. So it's a hydroponics. It's a technique where plants. You have a substrate where the roots grow, and the plant's roots grow, and they go and look for their nutrients themselves. They get all the nutrients from the water. This is there are several techniques: aeroponics, aquaponics, or hydroponics, and which follow a similar concept. So the fact that the substrate is a neutral substrate, and all the nutrients come from water.
Okay. Wow, I'm discovering a lot.
It's actually used by not only by vertical farms, but it's usually also used by other types of agriculture, more traditional agriculture. I think all the salad that's today is sold in the supermarkets is not done on the soil, in the soil.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, then we have Lorenzo, who came back.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I would like to answer you. If you were able to increase the yield of the products thanks to this system.
So we were able to increase our initial yield, but this has been done by changing several types of techniques on the various phases. The phenotyping is just a tool to make the experiments easier. So you can say that the fact that you take images directly increases your yield, but the fact that you take images or that you have a database which is systematic, which is easy where the data is stored in order, and where you can query it very easily, and so all the, say, the data and systematic approach, that indeed is helped us a lot, because many different types of species, many different types of lights, many types of different energy, different photo periods, and so the degrees of freedom are huge. So the data here is it's like a tool which helps you take smarter decisions. This is what I tried to say at the beginning. So from when we started to today, we have changed already several nutrients recipes. We have changed the way we germinate. We have changed the temperature at night and day. So we have made many different changes, many changes on how we were producing in May, for example. And this was also thanks to data for sure.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Then we have a question from one of the speakers, from Nele. So she asked if there's sometimes diseases. Do any diseases get into the crops?
Absolutely. So one of the good things of vertical farming is that it's indoor, and therefore the species, the plants are safer, because this is why we don't use pesticides, because we don't get insects inside, we don't get particles from outside, so the environment is controlled. But this doesn't allow this, of course. It's not 100%. I mean, things go inside, and we do have stress, and more than disease. We never had an actual disease, but what you get is various types of stresses, which depend on deficiency. So nutrient deficiency, light deficiency, overwatering. So you get yellowing, you get necrotic spots, and it's there is a literature that tells you when these things occur, but sometimes it happens, you don't know why. So we are actually, one of the reasons we are gathering all this data is to understand what type of condition favors what type of stress as well. We are building a monitoring system for the plant to do it directly with images. Today we don't have it in place yet, but we are already developing the algorithm, and so it's just a matter of some months or so ahead before it works and put in production. But so this is a central thing. R&D, you study the reaction of the plants. Facility, you monitor. All these two things don't exist off the shelf. And it's so you have to build them yourself.
Great. It's really nice to see how AI and data is driving science. Very interesting. Then I have a question from Ramji, who asks, or maybe Ramji, you can ask it yourself. You're in the
yeah. So, well, I've had another question once he explained the disease resistance owing to the environment that the hydroponics are set up in. If I understand well, the floating substrate on water makes it much more easier for pathogens to spread, not pests, but for microbial pathogens. Do you think would it be possible for you to detect it in time, because they spread much more rapidly in comparison with soil-based hydroponics? Would it be possible to detect it with vision quickly enough to, because I think you also have to make it more modular in order to mitigate the risk. But
yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So would it be possible to do it in time? And the second question is,
yeah, go ahead.
And the second question is, do you have any predictions on how these substrates and hydroponics in contained environments would be feasible for growing staples?
Staples?
Yeah, like wheat or...
okay.
Yeah,
okay.
The food group that comprises majority of energy.
Okay, so these are two great questions. Unfortunately, so the first, can you detect them on time? The answer is I really hope so, but I don't know. So we are planning to put sensors inside the water. We don't have them at the moment, but monitor various things, which not only image-based thing, not only image-based monitoring, but even the temperature of the water and the level of pH of the nutrients, which hopefully can help us understand and flag if something wrong is going on. But luckily enough, in 6 months of production, we never had a big issue. No pathogen spread. We had some yellowing at some point, which was probably due to overwatering for the irrigation system, which was not tuned correctly. But so I don't know. So I hope so. I don't know if we are able to do it on time. Regarding your second question, this is a crucial point on vertical farming, and it's great that you brought that up, because this is actually, I think it's the slide which is right underneath our I don't know the slide we're seeing. So energy cost and limited species variety. Of course, today we can only grow baby leaf, and in order to be like economically viable. And some farms around Europe are started growing strawberries. So let's say small red fruits. The day we can do wheat with this technique is very far away. So I think I'm a data scientist. I repeated this several times. I'll just say, so I'm not an expert of these things. I'm taking care of building it. So I'm in this environment. It's been a year and a half. So I've been to several talks. I've heard experts speak. I know this is the weak point of vertical farming. And so for the moment, we have to just be happy with salads. And at least when you eat salad, you have the choice between something which is more or less sustainable. So if it's in a vertical farm, you know that it won't have pesticides. It will not exploit any land. It will not travel for thousands of kilometers and stuff like that. So that's, of course, vertical farming by itself is definitely not the silver bullet that will solve the problem, that the food scarcity that we will face in the next decades. So we have to come up with something else, of course. I do think that the techniques we are building to monitor, the vision-based techniques to monitor crops in vertical farming, can be then used in the land and in normal agriculture. I know they already are, of course, with these amazing drones that are becoming more and more intelligent, and that will save us from hunger and from fires, apparently. So, which is, so yes, long story short, I think we're far from there.
Okay, thank you. Then last question before the break from Daniel Borek. He asks, how long is one cycle of growing plants, and does artificial environment change anything? So
yes, indeed. So we are, our cycles are of depending, because then, okay, so we can produce in 19 days. Then sometimes we take longer because it's a choice of logistics for the production, because then of course when you produce and you realize that you have to give every day like 1,000, 2,000 packs of salad, no matter what, you realize that, okay, even if you don't optimize the day of growth, but you make all this process easier, it's worth it. So we do it in 19 days. Sometimes for production we make it to 21, and this is a huge improvement with respect to normal agriculture, where it takes above 30 days, tops 30 days.
Okay.
And we have to say that one thing I might add is that these crops are not seasonal. Thanks to vertical farming, you have a constant production 12 months a year. So if you want to eat strawberries or basil, or you don't have to wait for that season, which it might be a good idea or not. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot. It was very interesting. So let's take a short break.
Thank you.
It's already quite late, so I suggest a 5-minute break. So 21:21. Let's come back for the next two speakers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
So I encourage everybody to go to Gathertown if they want to do the social break, like 5 minutes, or to take a look a little bit on how it works. If not, then we can see each other again at 21:21.
I feel bad, like everybody, oh no, he has headphones. Oh, that was Rishi, go get some headphones. Dude. Oh my god, it's from him.
Okay, hello everyone. Sorry, I'm a bit late. 1 minute. I think I had to floss my cat. This always takes a little bit longer than expected. Okay, so our third speaker is Padraig. He's got a quite impressive CV as well. So he's got a PhD in complex networks from Coventry University. He worked at Oxford University afterwards, and now at the University of Limerick, with many publications in PNAS, Royal Society, +1, and so on. He likes music. I'm very curious. I couldn't find a link straight away, so maybe you can share that in the first 10 seconds, because our timing is strict. And he has a weakness for beer and whiskey. That really reminds me of a Tom Waits song, actually. Anyway, this is completely off topic. And now we can get on topic. Padraig, I will leave the floor to you to share us your insights.
Okay, let me just share my screen. Okay, you should be able to see that.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, just on the poll, I see a good few readers and viewers of the show. A good few haven't though. And in terms of the second question, I've heard Dunbar's number. Quite a few people have seen Dumb and Dumber, or at least one person has anyway. I didn't realize at the time that kind of shows my age. It turns out that was 1994, which was quite a long time ago now. But not a bad year for Ireland in the World Cup. We knocked Italy, or we beat Italy in the first match. So that's always good for us. So I'm going to talk to you about the social networks of ice that appear in this book's Song of Ice and Fire. So Song of Ice and Fire are a series of currently 5 books by George R.R. Martin. The TV show Game of Thrones is based off them. For those of you who have read the books, it's currently ongoing. He plans 7. I think if you are reading it, you don't believe he will finish in 7. And the last book came out 9 years ago, so a lot of readers don't even believe the 6th book is ever going to turn up, unfortunately. Each book is told from, or each chapter in the books are told from the point of view of a certain character. So these are the point of view characters that appear in the first book, A Game of Thrones. This is an image I got from someone on DeviantArt, which I thought was very nice. So as a result, when we get the network, what we do is we read through the text and we mapped out every interaction between each character. So that was a project done by a research assistant who assured me it was the greatest job he ever had. And in this, as a result, we get this sort of social network, but these 14 point of view characters, we get their full sort of social network over quite a long period of time. But the other characters in the social networks, we only get like a sort of, we get the perceived network from other people. So we don't know their full social networks. So as a result, we're going to talk about it from the point of view of these 14 characters, as well as a top-down social network from what the information we do have. So from the bottom up, from the ego, we're going to talk initially about this idea of Dunbar's number. So Dunbar's number is 150. It's the average number of friends people have at any given point in their life. And if you make new friends, you tend to sort of lose contact with old friends. And within this 150, you have sort of layers of friends. So the innermost one here you have is the support clique. This would be, the average for this is 5. And these would be like your family, your closest friends, the people you have very high contact frequency with, but also very emotionally close to. And this goes out, so 15 is the next layer, and then 50, and then 150. And this is these are sort of the Dunbar circles. This all comes from the social brain hypothesis. And then from a sort of top-down approach, we're going to talk briefly about the actual or some properties of the social networks. So the main one I'm going to talk about in this case is the idea of assortativity. Assortativity has been a property shown to discern social networks from other types of complex networks. So assortativity is just the idea that people associate with people similar to themselves. So on the left here, you have a disassortative graph, and this person in the center is very popular. He's friends with a lot of people, but everyone he's friends with is only friends with a small number of people. So that's the idea of being disassortative. Assortative is what social networks tend to be, or more likely assortative, in that if you are very popular, your friends are also quite popular. And usually in the literature, assortativity is found to at least be 0 or slightly greater than 0 for social networks, but less than 0 for complex networks. So this is the social network of the first book, A Game of Thrones. The blue nodes here are male characters, red are female characters, and gray are characters who die during the course of the story. You probably, if you're familiar with the material, you'll probably recognize that certain characters there, particularly at the center. Going to talk just about some properties of the network. So on the left here, you just have the number of characters appearing in every chapter. You see this sort of fluctuates, but it's usually between like maybe around 40 or so. There's one chapter in the 4th book that's got a very high number of characters appearing in it. But usually chapters take place over a short period of time, like a week or two. And each character, and it's like that point of time in this character's life. So they don't interact with too many people. And now some of these, they will actually just be thinking about other people. So that sometimes it can be inflated that way. On the right, we've got the cumulative number of characters per chapter. So even though we're in the 5th book now, he has not slowed down at introducing new characters. There's new characters coming in at the same rate in books 4 and 5 as there was in books 1 and 2, unfortunately. So we're over 2,000 characters named in the book series. And then on the lower, in the living characters, we've got characters who are still alive by the end of it. So there's been a few hundred people who've been named who were either already dead when the story began or killed during the story. Even though we continually increasing the number of characters, however, the social network properties actually level off and stabilize fairly quickly during the first book, in fact. So this is the average number of interactions any character has, so not just the 14 point of view characters now, but any character in the network, this is the average number of connections they have. And for those who are still alive, you see this is great, slightly greater than 15, and or sorry, slightly less than 15. For any named character, it's a bit above 15. This is also one of the Dunbar numbers. And on the right, we've got this assortativity, and you can see it sort of fluctuates a lot and then goes slightly positive and kind of fluctuates around 0. If you're familiar with the material as well, there's a very significant event that happens towards the end of the 3rd book, and when 2 major characters are killed off. And as a result, those 2 characters have a very high degree, so then the assortativity jumps up. Similarly, the average degree jumps up because 2 characters have a very large number of connections, a large number of interactions get killed. And a lot more than 2 characters, but 2 significant ones. These are some graphs that aren't as pretty because we didn't use them in the publication. But on the left, we've got the actual degree distribution. This is the number of characters, the frequency that people interact with. So you can see this, the upper limit is around 150, which is around the Dunbar number. And on the right, we've got the average degree just of those 14 characters as it grows throughout the series. So you can see, despite the fact that there's over 2,000 named characters, each character never gets close to even this Dunbar limit. So as you're reading the book, as a reader, you're sort of imagining each chapter from the social network of the character. And that character is a social network very similar to that we hold. So despite the fact that you've over 2,000 characters, you don't need to think about all these 2,000 characters at any given point. You just need to think about the 100 or so that character it cares about. And the second thing we looked at then is this idea of the inter-event time. So the inter-event time in human nature tends not to be regular or random. It tends to be what's called bursty. So this is like the Wikipedia edits, for example, and you can see there's these periodic spikes. There's low periods where people are asleep. And when you plot these tend to, for a lot of human activities, including violent activities and murders and patterns, these tend to happen on a power law. So this is a log-log scale on both these axes. This is again Wikipedia edits and tweets. So in the way the story of Song of Ice and Fire is told, it's not told in order of events. So if you map out the chapters chronologically as to when they happen, that's what's done on the right. It looks very different to what happens on the left, which is the way the story is actually told. So when we look at the inter-event time of the distribution of deaths, just even looking at these, it looks a lot more regular on the left than the way it's told. When you actually fit these, you find that the left, this idea of the way it's told, it's well fitted by a geometric or an exponential distribution. Whereas if you order it in terms of the in-universe chronology, it tends to be, it looks more like a power law. It looks more like what we observe in real human interactions, or real human behavioral patterns. So the narrator, the author has purposely reordered it to make it seem like these events, particularly deaths, occur more randomly than they actually do within the story. So that's everything. I think I was kept to my time, hopefully. This is just the written part of those conclusions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, I'm not at all familiar with these books, so it's complete. So it's my introduction to the novels. I'm getting curious.
They're worth the read, but you'll be waiting a long time for to get a conclusion.
Yes,
or a satisfactory conclusion.
Let's have a look if there are any questions from the audience. Anyone? I maybe have a question to kick off. I have no clue what I'm talking about, so forgive me if it's. But do you think this was, so you did a network analysis on these books? Do you think they were set up on purpose by the author to satisfy these laws, to reflect?
I don't think so. I think so. Martin's a very experienced writer at this point. It's like he's been writing both novels and television shows for a long time, and I think this was sort of like, for him, is like his magnum opus, his main, like what he's most interested in writing and working on. So I think it's just all this experience, kind of learned what it takes. So when we compare this to other networks, like it's very comparable to Shakespeare in the way Shakespeare sort of has a great understanding of the human condition. So I think he just has a good understanding of what is that naturally this is what like the reader can manage. So he sort of pushes to the limit of what we can cognitively manage in terms of keeping track of characters, despite the fact that there's a vast number of characters. Like if you read it, you can continually see these names mentioned that you just, so often you just don't think about unless you look further into the lore, or or if that character plays a role later on. And then in terms of this interevent time, I'm convinced he certainly did try and order it in an event that makes the book more exciting. But I don't think he did it like I don't think he did it systematically. He just said, "Oh, it might be more exciting if we put this chapter here." And I imagine the editorial team would have had a lot of say in that as well, about the order in which chapters are told.
Okay, so. And related indeed, you touched upon it, but Des Johnson asks indeed, so how does the structure compare with historical texts, like other texts, and counter examples maybe as well?
Yeah, so a lot of my own research would have been looking at social networks in either historical text or mythology. It looks more realistic than things like, say, the Iliad or Beowulf. It looks more like the social. So those social networks are kind of a more focus on a small number of characters. So they tend to be very like right skewed. This looks more like what you expect from real social networks. It looks particularly like the social networks that appear in the sagas of the Icelanders. So these are stories of the people who settled Iceland, and they tend to be stories of a people rather than sort of heroic deeds like a lot of kind of mythology or epics would be about. Surprisingly, the social network is very different from that of Lord of the Rings as well. Lord of the Rings is a very high focus on a small number of characters, but you get very little information about the supporting characters. Whereas in the social network of Song of Ice and Fire, you still have a lot of information about a lot of other characters who are just named in it.
Mm. Okay. Then I have a question from Yerali, and apparently you showed a plot from one of his or her, papers. Maybe you want to take the
probably
floor.
This one, is it?
No, it was. Maybe I can give you the floor. Voila.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes. Yes, it was a surprise for me to see one of the that plot. But yes, so one question. I can ask you the following question. So what kind of difference do you think that it can be found whenever we compare real data and fictitious one?
So when we compare data, like fictional data in general to real data, is it?
Yeah.
So yeah, this is, I suppose I kind of touched a little bit on this with Des's question earlier. So it's interesting, I think, that certain social networks look a lot more like real social networks, or what we observe to be real social networks. I think that's sort of the part of the point of this particular paper, that you would naively, this is a story set in a fictional world where seasons last for years and there's got dragons and magic. Yet the social network he presents is still very sort of, I guess, realistic is the word. And I think that's sort of just from a narrative point of view that helps the reader a lot, and that's probably why these books are more popular than a lot of other fantasy stories, because as a reader you can sort of you can relate to partly you can relate to the characters, but you can also relate to the social worlds they have, and you can follow it a little better than other stories where it might just get a bit too dense. And I think it does. There's still a lot of work to be done on fictional networks and what you can actually, what differences you get and what they mean. But usually, at least in my own research experience, a lot of what it sort of tells you is about the genre of the story. So, for example, if you look at something like the Odyssey, this is a story about Odysseus, traveling around. He encounters lots of different groups. So, if you look at the social network of this, you get Odysseus with a massively high number of connections, very high degree, and you see his son as well, also is quite a high degree, and then all these other characters you know nothing about. So, just looking even at the degree distribution rather than the network alone, in that it can tell you what kind of story it is. It's a sort of voyage story. It's a heroic story focused on one hero, whereas this is really more a story of a sort of people. So it does tell you a lot about the genre, but I think it tells you a lot about the writer as well when he sort of captures the properties of real social networks.
Okay, good luck for your future research.
Thank you. You too. I'll hope to cite you again.
Okay, thank you. So yes, we had a similar question indeed. Can you distinguish between history and myth with such technique, like the genres? I think you answered that.
Yeah, I suppose just as specifically with, can you distinguish between history and myth? That was something we did set out to sort of ask initially, because the Iliad, for example, is based on a real conflict, whereas, and Beowulf as well, Beowulf is like a real person. Well, at least Beowulf himself, sorry, he's not a real person, but the king in Beowulf is a real person, and the countries are. So, like, you don't believe the events of that story happen, but maybe the social network it portrays is a real social network. The problem is, because of these genre issues, you can't really, unfortunately, properly distinguish between history and myth. But you can, I think, if it's, and again, with this having a sort of real social network, that also would not help with that argument, I suppose.
Okay. Yes, indeed. Yeah. Thank you. Then we have a question from Alex. I will give you the floor.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. So I was wondering if you considered doing some kind of link predictions to try to predict future logical interactions between characters in an imaginary book, for example, based on the past interactions.
I had a master's student before who was very interested in this, and we looked at it on 2 data sets, both books, where we had, you know, we mapped out all the interactions, and we used artificial neural networks to try and predict future links. What we were sort of able to do was, within reasonable parameters, estimate what the social network in the future would look like. You know, you might get something that does a good approximation of the social network, but for specific links, I didn't feel it did a great job. Our plan was to continue with it a bit further, but that particular student did go into industry afterwards, so you know, we lost him. We haven't gone back to it yet, but it is something we would be interested in working on, certainly.
Okay, thank you. Great talk.
Thank you.
Also something freaky a bit that if you use it, for example, in law enforcement, or I don't know, like, or who may you meet in the future?
Well, there are people trying this. There's a
yes. Okay, I don't think we have any further questions. I want to thank you again.
I have just maybe a question.
Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. I was wondering, so I know that a book is also kind of an evolution across time, right? And across the chapter. Did you look at your networks more in a temporal or dynamic way? Or is it interesting to look that way, maybe, to see how the network builds and is destroyed also across chapters?
Yeah, so like what we did do was, in this sort of situation where we kind of like built up the network over time and analyzed it as it evolved in time. But other than that, we didn't look into it in much more of a temporal network way. One of our co-authors, or actually one of our colleagues, has done something looking at the sort of evolution of the importance of characters from a temporal approach rather than using something like, you know, a static snapshot at the end. But for the most part, really, all we did temporally was just look at how it evolves and how it changes over time. I think the main conclusion we observed from that is how it was remarkable how even during the first book, generally the properties tend to stabilize. So if you look at this particular plot on the right, the number of characters he introduces keeps increasing almost linearly. But in these and quite a few other network measures we looked at, the actual structural properties of the network stabilize. But that was pretty much the extent to which we looked at temporally so far.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I was still on mute. Then thanks again. So I want to introduce now the last speaker, Nele. She is a professor of biophysics at the University of Ghent. Has a PhD in theoretical physics. From the bio, I read that she took data from dog hearts and clinical data of patients. This really triggers my imagination, of course, and combine both to make patients better. And it's a quite broad range of interests. So very interesting in everything connected to brains, psychology, anthropology, much needed these days, and ecology. And she also has the heart at the right place because she was worried about climate change and the loss of biodiversity. So, Nele, the floor is yours.
Okay, so I will share my screen. Okay, share. And then... Okay, so do you see my screen? Yeah, like this?
Yes, so, perfect.
So indeed, most deaths in the Western world are indeed caused by cardiac arrhythmias. So most people got it right. And I will talk also about ablation, and ablation is indeed burning tissue of the heart. So it's not making an incision, but it's burning really the tissue of the heart. And so what I will be talking about is about a novel way to really look at cardiac arrhythmias. we're going to merge for the first time. We also had a talk about it just previously, network theory, which was applied to a book. And here we're going to apply it to cardiac arrhythmia. So network theory is something that is very diverse. So in order to understand the heart, we first need to understand what the heart does in a normal way. So normally your heart gets excited by, you have something called the SA node in your heart. So it's like a small region in your heart that's connected to your brain. And this part of your heart excites the rest of your heart. So if there's some electricity triggered here, it will propagate through your atrium, through your left and your right and your left atrium. And then it will go from here to the AV node. It will delay a little bit. And then it will be very fast propagated to the rest of your heart, to your ventricles. And then the electrical wave will be more or less simultaneously in your ventricles. And when this electrical wave passes through your heart contracts. So first your atria contract, they force the blood into the ventricles, and then from the ventricles it goes to your lungs or it goes to the rest of your body. So it's really from top to bottom. And the normal rhythm of your heart is about 60 beats per minute. So it's determined by this SA node, which is connected to your brain. So it goes faster when you run, for example. And it means that we have about 100,000 beats per day and 3 billion in a lifetime. So it's a lot. So you can imagine that something might go wrong with this electrical wave. And what is the thing that makes this electrical wave go wrong? Or how does it actually go wrong? So when something goes wrong with an electrical wave, we call this a cardiac arrhythmia. So in essence, a cardiac arrhythmia is really this electrical wave, which does not do what it's supposed to do. And the main reason why you have an arrhythmia, there are actually two reasons, but I will only talk about one reason, is that as an electrical wave starts to rotate. And suppose this is a valve of your heart, the electrical wave can start to go around this valve, and it can keep going around it, as you see here in this simulation, forever. And here you see your ventricles. There is a little bit of tissue that I scarred, so that it's not conducting. And here you also see that there's an electrical wave going around it. And how does it actually work? This is called anatomical reentry, anatomical because it goes around an obstacle. And you can actually compare it to a Mexican wave. So in a Mexican wave, people have to stand up. Then the next people will stand up and so on. And if the wave goes around, you have to sit before you can stand up again. Or if you think about the first talk with the fires, the bushfires, if you want that this fire keeps continuing, you could imagine like a circular ways of putting the trees. And if you want the fire to keep on going continuously, the tree has to grow before it can burn again. And that's the same in the heart. So you can keep going forever. If your cell is in rest before the new wave arrives. So your cell gets excited, it rests, and then it can get excited again. So like a Mexican wave, like a ring of trees, and so on. There are many examples in nature which go like this. So if you have something like this, if your heart is vulnerable to getting this rotating electrical wave because of some properties of your heart, you have an arrhythmia. And they will try to treat you with medication, which changes a little bit the properties of this electrical wave. But if that doesn't work, they will go inside your heart through your veins. So they will enter via your groin. They will go inside your heart, and they will actually burn a piece of your heart. So here you can see that they go here inside the heart via a vein. They will make a puncture in your, for example, if they want to go to your left atria, it's always flipped. They will try to find where this rotating electrical wave goes. And then they will just scar your heart. So they will just burn this tissue like you would burn your skin with a cigarette. It's the same principle. They will burn this tissue so it doesn't conduct anymore. So this wave will bump against this line and it cannot rotate anymore. So it's very invasive, and you can imagine that you don't want to burn too much because you still want your heart to function. So if you would burn the whole heart, nothing is left, and yeah, then you have to put a pacemaker or you have to get a new heart or something. So you want to burn as little as possible, but as effective as possible so that you really interrupt the rotation path. But there are many, many possibilities how an electrical wave can rotate in your heart. And actually, strangely enough, this field of medicine is called electrophysiology. And there doesn't exist any algorithm to automatically determine the location of a cardiac arrhythmia. So what do they currently do? So they go inside your heart with a catheter. And on this catheter, on the tip, there is an electrode. And they will measure with this electrode the time that the wave passes that electrode. And we will talk about atrial tachycardia. So it's a regular arrhythmia. So when they want to treat somebody with this regular arrhythmia, so really a rotating electrical wave, which is just every 200 milliseconds, it passes by the same area. So they will measure all the points, and they can know exactly at this time. So when this is, you have like a steep deflection here, you know that the wave passed by at this location. And because it's regular, you can just move your catheter around and you can just measure all the points. And because it's regular, you know exactly when you move it around. It's like you're taking a panoramic picture of the heart, and you can know all the times that the wave passed by. You have a reference time, so you can compare with that reference time. And you get this kind of colored picture. So red means early, blue means late. So they can say, okay, the wave starts with red, then it evolves into green, and then it goes into blue. So, and then blue meets red, so you know it's going around, something like that. But it's not always so easy. So sometimes you have very complex patients or complex hearts with a lot of scar tissue, and this wave can really rotate, but in a very complex way, and it's not so easy to figure out where it goes first. So this map is already much more difficult. Or in this map, does it rotate here, or does it rotate around? You have the pulmonary veins. This is a mitral valve, so you have some terms here, and it can rotate around different parts of the heart. So the doctor, when he sees this color map, he needs to interpret this manually. And if you give the same map to a different doctor, they can sometimes come up with a different analysis. So they can say, no, it rotates around here. And the other doctor says, no, it rotates around here because of this reason. So it is challenging, and it is dependent on the doctor, so dependent on the operator. And so we came up with a novel methodology. So in the introduction, so I actually came up with that methodology because I was working on dogs' hearts. And so we came up with a novel methodology to determine these sources automatically. And what we do is we describe the electrical propagation in the heart as a directed network. So to what does it come down to? We are going to connect, here you see dots in the heart. So these are the places where they take the measurements. And we know the time that the wave arrived here. We know the time that the wave arrived here. And we're going to connect these two lines if the difference in distance, we also know the difference in distance, divided by the time, which gives the velocity. So if we know this time, we know this time, and we know the distance, we also know what is the velocity, the velocity that suppose that a wave would go from here to here. And if that velocity is a realistic velocity, we draw an arrow. So we had this idea of doing that. And I will first explain this on a real patient's heart, and then I will tell the story how we went to the doctor to ask this. So this is a patient, and all these dots are all the measured points of this heart. And first, for each point, we determine what are the neighboring points. So which points lie close to this point. So of course, we will not connect this point to this point because a wave has to travel physically through the heart. So these are all the neighbors of one point. Then we measure all the conduction velocities and we set the minimal and a maximal conduction velocity. So these were 3 possible arrows that which were in the right range of conduction velocities. So you see, this is the activation time of this dot. This is the activation time. So this is the activation time of the yellow. This is from the blue. And this distance was small enough so you can draw an arrow. And we do this for all of the points. And so we get this complex network here, this complete network. And then what we do is we just look at something very simple. We just look at the cycles in the network. So we look at closing loops. So all the ones which just close. And in network theory, there are very efficient algorithms to determine that. So we just took the algorithms from network theory, which already existed. We implemented them. And here you see all the found loops. Then we did a lot of things and research on what is the best loop. And we came up with some optimization. And this is the final loop of this patient. And this patient indeed had a reentry going, or a loop going like this, or a rotation going like this. And they ablated this patient from here. And here is a mitral valve. So they put a line like this, which exactly crosses this loop. And so first, when we had this idea, we went to one of the doctors in Ghent, in the hospital of Ghent University, and we had this very idea, but it was still not very concrete and so on. And when we came to that doctor, he was really like, doctors, they're usually like, everything has to go fast because they have to operate patients or they have to do surgery and so on. And we were with this fuzzy idea, and we were very lucky that he believed us. And he said like, yeah, I understand it. And I think something is in it. And he just said, okay, I'm going to give you data and you can try. And so when we started to do this, so this is, for example, a patient. This was the doctor's idea of where the rotation was going, and this is what we found. It's going like this. This is what we found. So it's exactly the same. And he started to become more and more interested as we started to show our first results on the patients. And I want to actually show you actually a real life. So this is a movie, but I'm going to show you how it works. So no, sorry, this is my program. So we just open a program. So we've written a software. So actually my student did this. And we just select a patient. We open it. We put down the cycle length. So this is the time that it takes for the wave to go around. We just press calculate, and now you can see how fast it goes. So this is the heart of the patient. And voila, we already have the analysis, so it goes within seconds. And we have here a double loop, so it goes around. There's a little bit of scar tissue here. And this here, I don't know if you can see, this is the mitral valve. So we can turn around this heart. We can make this nodes a bit bigger and so on. So this is, we can remove this tracker. And so we can just show to the doctor, okay, here you have to ablate. So here, if you ablate like this, you will cut both lines. So you cut this reentry loop and you will cut this reentry loop. So you have to burn from this tissue, from this scar here to this is called the mitral valve. So this is it. So it's very fast. So this is our program. And what we did is we tested 31 cases. So after the ablation, and we just looked whether we had the ablation target correct, and it was 100% correct. So our first data was really successful. And then we tested 51 complex cases, and we analyzed the mechanism in detail during the ablation. And then with this 51 cases, we had 74% correct, while the expert had 64% correct. Sorry, 64% correct. And actually, we are now developing a new algorithm to actually improve the results another 16%, so we can get to 90%. And you can ask, okay, what says is the complete correct mechanism? There existed a complicated technique to really know in detail what is the mechanism, but I will not go into detail because of time. So I just want to, so this was really successful for one arrhythmia. What do we want to do in the future? I just obtained an ERC grant. So yeah, a few months ago, I had the very nice news, great news, that I have 1.5 million euros for 5 years to spend on elaborating on applying network theory to cardiac arrhythmias. So I have an ERC grant, and it will start in February until February 2026. And we will focus on 3 areas. So we want to make AT perfect. So this is the arrhythmia that I just spoke about. Yeah, so 1 minute will be perfect. We want to investigate atrial fibrillation. This is another arrhythmia, and it's actually the most common arrhythmia. It's not lethal, but it causes a lot of strokes, and this is lethal. So the arrhythmia itself is not lethal, but it has a lot of comorbidity, and this is lethal. And it's the most common arrhythmia in the world. So if we could investigate this arrhythmia with our network theory, we could really have, like, it's one of the holy grails. And we also want to investigate, this is called ventricular tachycardia. This is an arrhythmia in your ventricles, and this is lethal. So it's an arrhythmia that it's a regular arrhythmia, but you get it in the lower chambers of your heart. And yeah, so we are actually having the first results, and they also look really good on this. So what is our goal? We want to make a difference in the treatment of patients with an arrhythmia. So we are also talking to companies and to doctors, and we really want to go from the theory to the patient. And we want to understand the needs of healthcare, and we want to also make our software available for EPs to use it, and hopefully one day a company would integrate it in their software that they would be interested. So we also applied for a patent. So I want to end with all the people who are working on this. So we have modeling people. These are the 4 people. We have clinical people, and we also work with network specialists. And then we work with some other doctors and modeling people. So it's really very interdisciplinary. So with this, I want to stop. So if you have questions, I will be very happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you. It was very, very interesting. Are there questions from the beloved audience? And maybe I have a question. Just how did you come up with the initial idea of applying network theory to this problem? Is it?
Yeah, so it started with the dogs. So I wanted to investigate a certain arrhythmia in dog hearts. And what they did is they did very invasive experiments on these dogs. So they cut open actually the chest of the dog. Then they opened, you saw the beating heart, and then they inserted needles in that dog with a lot of electrodes on these needles. And they wanted to know what was the mechanism of an arrhythmia called torsade de pointe, which is a very, it's often a side effect of certain drugs. And if you have the side effect in a drug, they usually prohibit it from coming on the market. So it's an important arrhythmia for this, for drug assessment. And the problem was with these needles, so they were like everywhere in the dog's heart. But I wanted to know, there is a debate whether there is a rotating electrical wave in this arrhythmia or not. Okay. And I needed to connect the different dots. And the only way, there are some techniques to find whether you have something rotating, but it didn't work for that data. So the only way how I could really figure this out was to connect them with lines, and then you very quickly come to the idea, oh, let's find the cycles. But strangely enough, it's a very simple idea. Nobody came to that before. So yeah, I was very lucky to find something that none of the people in the field thought about, and I'm actually the only one applying network theory on cardiac arrhythmias. So yeah, it's also probably why I got the grant, and it's very simple, but it's just merging 2 things together. And once you have that, it opens a lot of possibilities.
Yes, I'm always curious for this spark, and in hindsight, it's always easy, of course, but to come to this idea is, of course, not straightforward.
Yeah, and actually, when I had this idea, and nobody believed that there was anything interesting in that to find. Really? So I really had to like fight. I really believed in it, and I say like, okay, I have something here, But if I explain it first to other people, people said, yeah, but it's not going to give you anything new. And yeah, now I have this ERC grant, and I think I also became professor because of this idea. So it actually was very, it turned out to be very good. But in the beginning, nobody really believed in the idea, and everybody was saying to me, "You're not going to find anything new with that." And
yes,
it turned out to be completely different. So sometimes I want to advise to other people, if you have an idea and you really believe in it, just go for it, and don't listen to what other people say to you, because
indeed,
it's not always the right advice that you get from other people.
Yes, and it shouldn't be the case in a scientific community, of course.
Yeah, but it was.
May I ask something?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So yeah, you said you're a theoretical physicist, and there's no physics here. And I'm also a theoretical physicist, usually working in everything except particles. So I'm just wondering, like, also we have a reputation of like being super arrogant and coming to a new field and just kind of pretending to, but you did it. Like I want to see like what you as a physicist, what do you think is your special skill, and what kind of physicists can bring to this kind of field? Like which part of do you think that being a physicist gave you this special perspective into things like complex networks or something? Is this, you already said you had problems people believing you, so
good question. So the physics actually comes from the fact that I do a lot of computer simulation. So I first, simultaneously testing it with patients, I also tested it on computer simulations. And when I was analyzing the dogs, I did simultaneously computer simulations. And these computer simulations are based on dynamical systems. And these dynamical systems are equations from physics that are typical for its reaction diffusion equation. So that's the physics part. But yeah, besides that, I do a lot of simulations, and I always use simulations to go to the clinics and to say, okay, I'm going to simulate what you are doing. I'm not going to simulate some theoretical model that has no link with the clinic. So my idea is really to take these simulations which exist from theoretical physics, not theoretical, but from physics then, and then take them to the doctor and try to tweak them so they really look very similar to what the doctor sees. So that's the physics part. But besides that, I just think for me, I think as a theoretical physicist or as a physicist, you learn to think in an analytic way, but I think you learn it also when you do data analysis or whatever you come into science, you learn to think analytically, and I think that's enough. So you don't really need to be a theoretical physicist, I think, to come to this idea. I think you just need to have a background in thinking scientifically, analytically, and that's also what I try to learn my students, that you just need to have like a common sense, like you have to have you get a sense of what is possible and what is not possible. Like if you see something, you get a feeling of, okay, like it's maybe intuition, but you have to, of course, back it up with data, but like what is true and what is not true. And yeah, I don't think you need to be a theoretical physicist for that.
I didn't mean that you need. I just wanted to
say, but I know what you mean.
Which part of being theoretical physicist helped you here? So.
Yeah, I think I was just, it's maybe like thinking in a mathematical way, or looking at things in a way that makes sense. And I think you only need that to, anybody can work with us as long as they have to be able to program. That's one skill, but they can come also from informatics or whatever. But usually physicists are pretty good in this kind of way of thinking. So yeah.
Yeah, good.
So it's kind of
thank you very much. We have a lot of questions from audience.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll start with Jacopo. I'll give you the floor. Yes.
Okay. So Nelly, thanks a lot for your presentation. I was wondering, I'm engineer by training, so I don't know anything about how the human body works, but what I was thinking is that there are other systems, for example, the nerve system in the human body that are controlled by electricity. Do you think you could apply the same network principle, the same network study to other systems like this, or do they work in a completely different way?
No, it's a really good question. And actually, they are already applying network theory in the brain, for example. The brain is another electrical system, which is very similar to the heart, but the heart is more easy. Because in the brain, you have non-local connections and you don't need your signal to propagate in the direction, because the neurons can be located anywhere. So you can have one neuron which is firing to a neuron pretty far away. But you actually have, if you have an epileptical seizure, they say that it's because there is a rotating electrical wave in your brain. It doesn't go very fast, but there's some electricity which is rotating in your brain. And I actually was wondering myself if they use these principles of network theory in this epileptical seizure. So I don't really know, but I know that there is this kind of propagating electrical waves in the brain too. Another example is the uterus. I also know that uterus can contract, and I think there's also possibility of having rotating electrical waves. Also, like in the eye, but I think it's because of the brain, they also have electrical waves. And even bees, when they are all on a surface and they try to get rid of an enemy, they also start to behave like a rotating wave. So you see something and it makes them appear like one system, which probably, I don't know for sure, but it scares you can look at it, spiral wave and bees, and then you will find something propagating in the bees, because they do something with their wings to scare away enemies. So it's actually in a lot of different places. But I think the most interesting is probably the brain, to see if you have something like this. But as network theory is already applied there, I guess people already thought of that. But I should actually look it up to find out what people did in that. But I'm pretty sure I know that they're looking with network theory on the brain, but it's a really good question, of course.
Okay, thanks for all the pointers.
Okay, then we have a question from Ahmed. I'll allow you to talk, as they say in Zoom.
Yeah, hello?
Yes.
Yes, my question was about the software you presented there, and the model of the heart that you showed. Was what was the input data for that software? Was it like a 3D scan of the heart? And what do the points represent there? The blue and yellow ones, I think you had there. Was it the measurements that were taken?
Yeah. So we actually only need very little. So the doctor goes in your heart and he goes from dot to dot, or he has like some kind of hand, which has a lot of electrodes, and the hand goes over the surface of the heart and it takes measurements. So the measurements that we have are the measurements from the electrodes. And we also, because it's in the heart, we also know the XYZ coordinates. So we know the spatial coordinates, and we know actually it's called the LAT. We know the time that the wave passed by. We actually get the whole signal. So we get this, I think I showed it here. So we get this signal here from each dot. We get this signal, so we know when the wave arrived, so we can derive this from it, or we can, it's usually in the data itself, it's already derived from the data, but we can also do it ourselves. And then the doctor usually determines the dots. What is necessary for us is that's a little bit homogeneous, that it's everywhere in the heart. And actually that's it. And the rest that I showed here, so this was actually the movie, but it's in the software that I showed. The rest that I showed are just so what you saw, the shape comes from first when they go inside your heart, they sweep over with some type of catheter. They take the shape of your heart. And that shape is just for visualization, but we don't use it. We don't use it for the data analysis. It's just a visualization. But the only thing that we use are the dots, and the information from that dot is the XYZ coordinate and the time that the wave passed. So the actual time that the wave went by. So when you have a Mexican wave, it's a time when the people get up. So that time. So the time that the cell gets excited at that location. Does that answer your question? Because if it's not clear, I can try to make it more clear.
No, it's clear. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I assume you have to be able to project fields on this manifold for it to work, I guess. So in more complex structures.
We don't really have to project anything. We do it. Well, or what do you mean?
Well, if you have more complex physical, or how do you, organic structures.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff because you can also ask, so they sometimes put a basket in here which doesn't touch the walls, and then you have to do some projection and some inverse stuff to actually get the data on the walls. So there's a lot of research on that too. How can you get from not touching the walls, how can you get information from touching the walls? So yeah, there's a lot of research on that. But in this case, they were touching the walls. So it's pretty good data, but it's not always the case. So they're trying a lot of different things there.
Okay, then we have a question from Alex. I'll let you ask the question.
Thank you for the talk. It was, so I think it's very, very original idea, and the talk was very inspirational. I was wondering, apart from the cycles, which is one type of algorithm, have you tried other network algorithms, or looked at some network properties like centralities, etc.?
It's a brilliant question, yes, because it's in my ERC grant to do it. So we didn't do it yet, but we really want to do it. So currently we are trying to make the algorithm perfect for one arrhythmia. But my next idea is actually, I just sent an email today to somebody. I want to work with specialists in the field of network theory. I want to do maybe simulations or clinical data together. And I want to start to measure like basic properties of the network to, for example, see in atrial fibrillation, this more complex arrhythmia, if we can somehow organize the arrhythmia according to centrality measures or other things. Because right now, the only way that this arrhythmia is categorized is based on how long it's lasting in your heart. So you have the paroxysmal, which is just on and off and doesn't last very long. And you have the persistent, which is lasting for more than 7 days. And that's the only distinction that they make is in terms of time, but they don't make any distinction in other ways. So there are not any other biomarkers. So what would be really interesting is to start categorizing the arrhythmias based on other biomarkers, which could come from this network analysis. So it's exactly what we want to do.
Yeah, I have two other questions. Am I allowed?
Of course.
So yeah, thanks. So I was wondering also if you were planning to put those data publicly as open data, or is it patients?
You mean the data or the software?
Like, the data, like really like the graph structure and.
Yeah. The data itself comes from patients, so we are not allowed to put the data itself online. What we are going to do is we are now, so I just hired a software engineer, and currently my PhD student wrote most of the software, and he's rewriting it to make it very clean, so that anybody who wants to work with us can immediately start working on the software without too many problems. So he's really making it very professional. And when that's finished, we're going to put the software online, and we have two parts. We have the graphical user interface, which is Python-based. We're going to make that part open source, but the C code, which does the algorithms, we're going to hide it because we have a patent running. And if we want one day a company to use our algorithms, we need to patent it, because otherwise they are not interested, because then it's open and any company can use it. And so we're going to hide the C code, but we're going to allow people who want to work with us to also be able to use the source code if they sign an NDA with us. So I want to go as far as possible in making it open source, but I don't want for companies to use it for free, because how it was explained to me, companies are only interested if there's a patent behind it and if there's some way of exclusive, if you make it somehow exclusive. But my way of thinking is, of course, making it as open source as possible. But it's kind of colliding with the way companies think. So we went for a patent, and we're going to try to go as far as possible, but still protecting somehow that if someday a company would be interested, that we can still work with them. So that's how we're going to proceed.
That makes sense. And the last question was, so you explained that this is, you said it's not very invasive as for the dog, but it's still quite invasive to put those kind of needles inside the veins and do the measurement.
Yeah, for the measurement, you don't use needles. They just put a catheter there. It's just get pressure with a catheter. Yeah.
I see. But I was wondering if you were thinking of another way to kind of map the signal from external measurements. I don't know what kind of external measurement that would be non-invasive, that would be able to kind of come up with a mapping, for example, using machine learning between those external measurements and your analysis. Is it something that you believe is possible?
Yeah, it's again a good question. So I have multiple answers to that. So first of all, if they're going to do an ablation, most of the time they have to get in your heart, because the most effective way to do an ablation is still to go in your heart, go to the location and burn that spot. However, there exists a technology which uses like how they treat cancer. They use rave. They use how it's called, electrical waves to burn the tissue of the heart, X-rays, and so on. So there is another way. And actually, there's also another way of measurements to take. So there exists a vest, a vest full of electrodes, and people are actually trying with that vest to compute backwards what the signals had to do coming from the heart. So there exists this technology exists. The problem is with the heart, with the body, that it filters all the high frequencies. So for complex arrhythmias, they try to find like sources of where this complex arrhythmias come from. They determine them, then they go in the heart, and then they're going to ablate these sources. But so to answer your questions, one possibility could be, but I don't know if it's beneficial for the patient or not, to measure with this vest and then to put X-rays and then to burn tissue like specified, then it's completely non-invasive. That's maybe one idea. The second thing is you could use the signals from the vest and then go in the heart. And then the other thing that you said about machine learning is I have a master's student who is trying to do a lot of simulations, and he is trying to gather a lot of data from all the hearts that we collected so far. And he's going to try to figure out if purely based on the data, if we can apply machine learning to find also the location of the heart. So we're also trying to look in that direction. So your question has a lot of different aspects to it, and in all these aspects, people are doing some things in these aspects. So it's a very good question, and it's very interesting to look at novel ways to indeed analyze the data, also with AI and stuff like that.
It's a very interesting project. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for your question.
Okay, there are still some questions, but I suggest we take these on GatherTown. Because we have to wrap up. It's getting late. So Dimitar and Yerali, let's meet on GatherTown, where you can try to find Nele. You can dance, by the way, if you press the Z button. That's my favorite feature, of course, of this this platform. But you can also chat and talk. Nele, I want to thank you for this very interesting talk. All the speakers. Romesh went to sleep. He's from Sri Lanka, so it's now about 3 o'clock in the morning. So, but I want to thank all the speakers, and I see you on Gather Town on the dance floor. Ciao.
Yeah, but guys, before that, I actually have yes. So if you have been asking questions, you might have won some beers. So here comes the winners. The first one is Anton Nagoliuk. I think I pronounced that right. Yes, again. Then our speaker also made amazing questions, Nele. Congratulations. Then we have Yerali. Then we have Alex, and finally Jacopo. You guys